What's up, guys? Welcome to the Metal Roofing channel. I'm Thad Barnette. I'm here with Adam Mazzella from Sheffield Metals. We're here to talk about the metal market update. We're at the end of Q4 2025. This is December 23rd. We're going to talk about what the steel market and the aluminum market is going to look like going into 2026. Adam, let's start with steel. You know, what's new here in Q4 going into Q1 with steel?
Yeah, so on the Sheffield Metals side, we've announced increases. You know, these are just kind of pass-through, things that are coming down from steel mills down to us, and we're passing that on to our customers. We like to do these videos by way of making sure we get in front of our customers. If you miss the increase letter, if you have bids going out, you know, protect yourself with escalation clauses, things like that. So number of things driving it right now. So demand was sort of tepid going through 2025. I think the tariff impact had a lot to do with that. And I think mills looked at it as an opportunity to do a lot of Q4 maintenance. Adjacent to that, the Nippon US steel deal went through, and they took the opportunity to get a lot of coating extras, which kind of had a cascading effect in the industry. Coating extras are, you know, paying for the Galvalume coating that goes on the steel, the cold rolled steel. And so they took it as an opportunity to do increases. Those aren't, you know, fluctuating things or market related increases. Those will be increases that stick. So even if the CRU dropped or the market went down, these would be things that would, you know, kind of be a permanent thing in the pricing of the product. So you've got a lot of downtime from the mills and them doing a lot of shutdowns and upgrades to steel mills. You've got the coating extra charges going in. You've got the acquisition finally going through with Nippon and US Steel. So I think a lot of these things are driving it. A lot of steel consumers, such as us, are you know, had pretty much drained inventories down. Now everyone's buying again.
Yep, lead times are a little longer.
Lead times are a little bit longer, and you know, it's just pretty simple supply and demand.
Yep.
So, you know, I think we're anticipating the price being up into Q1. Things that could stimulate that to stay or even climb a little bit further would be a strong construction demand and or automotive demand. But at this point, you know, we're passing along an increase, and we're anticipating that sticking for at least the next, you know, 90 to 180 days.
Yeah, good to know. I mean, there's a variety of factors that's, you know, both that market aspect that we talk about all the time versus kind of standard price increases due to requoting, things like that.
Yeah. So, you know, protect your bids. Put escalation charges or clauses and things like that into your bids. You know, we don't want our customers to have to take it on the chin as we start rolling pricing letters out in January.
Okay. Well, let's move over to the aluminum side. You know, what have we seen from Midwest over the course of 2025?
So this was even more impacted by the tariffs than the steel world. Domestically, you buy based off of the Midwest premium. When you buy import, you're typically buying off of the LME or the London Metal Exchange. We've gone over that in previous videos. The Midwest average is up almost 400% from this time last year. So, you know, that equates to, you know, we'll say about 60 cents a pound. That 60 cents a pound converted into a per square foot price, if you're 032 aluminum, is roughly 30 cents a square foot. If you're 040, it's a little bit more. So keep that in mind as you're kind of seeing, oh my gosh, what's going on with aluminum? Everybody's experiencing it. Everybody's feeling it. Now, things kind of going on a macro level is as like the opportunity to bring import comes a little bit closer in. The LME is kind of taking a bolt and just making it kind of unobtainable. So the U.S. domestic market is completely dependent on domestic aluminum supply right now. There's only a handful of aluminum mills in the country. So, you know, there's not anybody that has some distinct advantage on where they're getting it, what they're getting. It's really all kind of the same pot at this point in time, especially with a lot of the import inventories depleted as we went through 2025.
Yeah, so we're all getting the aluminum from the same place domestically, you know, and so that makes a lot of a lot of sense why that price has increased. And, you know, do you see that continuing with aluminum going into 2026?
Yeah, and that's that kind of delta I poke at. Let's say the LME were to drop or the Midwest continue to climb and the LME not follow suit. that would open the door for some imports. Typically, the domestic market, from a flat-rolled aluminum perspective, requires some level of import. So I'm kind of surprised to see that it's almost 100% domestic right now. There's not some massive amount of aluminum that has come online. We're anticipating some coming online in 2026, but until that happens, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen that window open for some imports, or the delta between the Midwest and the LME to allow for some of these imports to happen. So I would expect that to happen, but I don't see the aluminum market cooling off either, especially in the first half of 2026.
Yeah. Now with Sheffield Metals, the substrate is only part of the equation when it comes to our products. Let's talk about paint line capacity, things like that. How does that impact pricing right now?
Yeah, so right now we haven't had any increases announced on paint line or coatings. We had some increases in 2025, Q1, Q2, 2025. We hadn't had any increases for probably a year and a half, 2 years before that on paint or coating. So at this point, we're not expecting anything in 2025, but you never know. You're input product away from increases going out, whether it be due to tariffs or scarcity in a product, an input product. So at this point, everything equal, we should be flat on paint and coating.
Okay. So, when we're kind of wrapping up this conversation, what does all this mean for a Sheffield Metals customer?
Yeah, so just make sure you keep an eye on what your new price is. We are anticipating competitors really across the board going up. It's been pretty well known since really October, November that we're going to start to see increases. We've held off about as long as we can, and ultimately mid to late January, these price increases will take effect. Protect your bids. We preach that all the time. That is the best thing you could do. There's no reason why a relatively small increase, incremental increase, why it should come out of the customer's pocket or the contractor's pocket. So that would be my best bet. I mean, that increase on a, let's say a 50 square roof is going to be less than a few $100. So, to me, it's something that you should be able to pass on to the building owner or homeowner.
Sure. All right, Adam. Well, I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the Sheffield customer base appreciates it as well. If you have any questions, comment down below or reach out to your account manager for more information. Subscribe here to the Metal Roofing channel. As always, I'm Thad Barnette. We'll catch you next time.